Today on the Pro-Life Podcast, did a doctor give a couple the wrong baby again? And we have another topic. It's gonna be a little heavy. The young ones might not need to be around for watching this one, but the bodies of aborted children found in DC. We need to talk about this. Let's get started. Well, happy Tuesday, my dudes. Yes, I said it. Ellie, you owe me a donation. $10. You too can get me to say things. Happy Tuesday, my dudes, or your thing. Sponsor our show. We'll say the things. Welcome back. So I know we're starting off a little silly. Things are thrown off today. Emily is not here.
Sad.
She is out and about, but
saving the world, doing important things.
Yeah. But I am joined by my favorite people again. Kim and Veronica are still here with me. So this article, you guys brought it up in the chat the other day, and I was like, seriously, this headline, couple says fertility doc mixed up embryos again.
Yeah, it's rough.
Again.
Now, this just seems to be the pile gets a little deeper of weird IVF things.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about IVF today, which is a really confusing topic for pro-lifers and even people who don't have a stance on the abortion issue. So we're going to talk a lot about it. And this poor couple.
Right. Well, we did the training the other day, and Sammy came in. We do all staff trainings here every so often, and Sammy came in and did a talk about this and brought up all these ethical issues, and was like, yeah, this is a complicated mess we've made for ourselves.
Yeah,
so
it's like a Pandora's box.
Kind of. So this particular instance is a Manhattan fertility specialist had previously mixed up embryos, does it again.
Now this poor family, they go to the fertility doctor and they do IVF, and then a while into this pregnancy, they discover that they were doing this prenatal screening, and they discovered that the DNA of the baby was different than that of the parents. And nobody could explain this for a while. Then they did test and realized, like, oh, we accidentally implanted somebody else's baby. And so now this couple is freaked out. They've loved this baby during the pregnancy.
Yeah, they said they were bonding with the baby. The baby was already kicking.
Yeah.
And they were terrified that once they find out who the biological parents actually are, that those parents would sue the surrogate mothers and father.
At this point, yeah, it would be surrogate.
And yeah, the surrogate, the mother who wanted to have a baby. And they would win custody over their child, because that's happened before. That happened 20 years ago under the same doctor, by the way.
The same doctor.
And so they...
fool me once.
True.
But come on, twice now? That's a shame on me.
Yeah, it's like, how do they
why is this guy still doing this?
Right.
Like, you've got to look up this guy's name. Like, Google is a thing.
Right.
Like,
Dr. Obajasu, I believe, in New York.
I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
New York Fertility Clinic.
So
stay away.
Let's frame with allegedly.
Right.
This is what happened.
Yeah, because they do deny it still. They deny that this happened. The doctor is denying that it's his fault.
The doctor denies it, but the couple says this is what happened. And so we're talking about a kid, you got old enough to do genetic testing. How far in is that? Because it's been a while.
It depends on the different things they're looking for, but usually, like, fetal anomalies, that's usually around 20 weeks.
So
you can test
about halfway through.
Yeah.
So
and
we're
usually
talking
you
halfway,
can feel the baby
maybe
kicking.
a little farther.
Yeah, like by 18 weeks, you can usually feel the baby moving, and really, that's when mothers usually tell people that they start to feel really bonded with their child.
Mm-hmm. So then they've bonded with this child, but like you said, the parents, the essentially surrogate parents at this point, are afraid that the biological parents are going to sue for custody and all this stuff. So they actually aborted this child.
Yeah, who they loved.
Yes, for this whole mess. And so it just opens Pandora's box of all of these ethical issues. Now, IVF, from a specifically pro-life standpoint, can have different opinions. Some people say, well, if you're implanting all of the embryos and doing everything that you can to preserve all of the lives that are created, then there aren't any ethical issues. Another side of the pro-life movement can say, well, you're violating the sanctity of marriage and that there's some ethical issues with that. But IVF, when you destroy the embryos that are created, that is inherently immoral and anti-life. And so that's the foundational problem that you often see with IVF, although not always.
Yeah. And one of the things I like to tell people whenever we start talking about IVF is we have to remember that any human being that is created is made in the image and likeness of God. There is no condemnation of the human being involved here. They are all people just like us, worthy of dignity, worthy of value. They are inherently dignified and valuable. And so every now and then IVF is so incredibly common nowadays that I've started to meet kids who are like, yeah, I'm a test tube baby, and what do you have to say about that? And I'm like, I'm so glad you're here. That's all I have to say about that. And it's
glad you
nice
made the
to
cut.
meet you.
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you. And I don't condemn anything about your existence. But I do have a lot of ethical concerns with the way it happened. And I want to be honest about it and not ever make them feel ashamed of being here or ashamed of their parents who might have also not known. Like, so many parents are encouraged to do IVF if they have fertility problems, and they don't know what's going on in the lab. They just are hoping to have a baby.
Can you tell us how does this all work? I don't think we've
for the
said
folks at home, and maybe certain Supreme Court justices watching who are not biologists, like Kim and I.
Should we just ask the other Supreme Court justices who are biologists? Well, Veronica actually is a biologist, though, so maybe we can appoint you to the Supreme Court.
Yes!
I'm down.
That'd be awesome.
You heard it here first.
I mean, I have a biology degree and I love bioethics, so at least I can confidently, perhaps amateurly, describe all of this stuff. And I read about it a lot too. I've been reading about this for like 12 years, so I do know some things. So there's a list, and there's kind of two like major problems. If we only had a couple minutes, I would just tell people, like, my elevator speech is the fact that the main IVF methods are to create life in a petri dish, and that in and of itself can bode ethical dilemmas. And then there's the other aspect of what to do with leftover embryos. But there's so much more. So since we do have a few minutes, I want to go through a timeline.
Let's start back at the beginning here.
Yeah, I kind of want to go through a timeline.
That's foundation of what IVF is and what we're doing here. It's not we went to the fertility clinic and then we went home and did the
Poof, you're pregnant.
Magical pixie dust.
Right, and pregnancy happens.
So it's really complicated. And first of all, and you have to remember that any couple who's doing IVF has probably been trying to get pregnant for a really long time, and usually they call the inability to get pregnant unexplained infertility until you go see a doctor who's actually trying to correct the issue. Usually they just offer IVF as a bypass. It's an alternative to correcting the fertility issue. It's just bypassing fertility altogether. And so what they do, if you start at the very beginning, they don't actually ask, any health background questions to try to figure out why the couple is having infertility, whether it's male or female infertility. They don't actually asking those questions. What they do is they set you up for ovarian treatment to overproduce eggs. So a woman would only produce one egg at a time. Right. Mm-hmm. So they do this hormonal stimulation of the ovaries so that she produces many eggs at one time. And this is ironically damaging to fertility. So let's say theoretically she didn't have any or very minimal fertility issues before. Let's say it was more of a male fertility issue. Right. And now this can actually cause sterilization, and it's really, really bad hormonally. It can really mess up all kinds of things in a woman's body, and there's all kinds of health fallout issues that can happen. Like, it increases risk of ovarian cancer and all kinds of like really scary things. So there's that, and it's also very painful. Ovarian stimulation is very, very painful for a woman. We're not supposed to be able to produce more than 1 or 2 eggs at a time. Right. So imagine producing like a dozen, like your whole abdomen's gonna be extremely swollen, and it's very painful. And so then they harvest the eggs, which is also painful. You have to go to the lab and harvest them, surgically remove these eggs.
We like to make this option 1?
Yeah, it's pretty commonly touted as like the best way to get pregnant if they have unexplained fertility. Like
sounds
this is just
like the best way to do anything.
I know, it's great. So they harvest the eggs, and then okay, we're sticking to the timeline, guys. So what's next? How do you get the sperm?
Right.
That's morally questionable, and a lot of people have a really big issue with it, and I don't blame them. I mean, this is outside of the context of marriage, and it's just it's like there's this sense of shame that, you know, the only way I can get pregnant is to do something wrong in order to have a child. And so a lot of couples after the fact will say like they have a hard time bonding with their child that they created out of IVF because they remember how they had to acquire this egg and the sperm, and it's just strange. Like you feel disconnected from your child. I'm not saying that's true of everybody, but I've heard some testimonies about that, and I would imagine that would be really difficult. It's like, how do you look into your child's eyes and remember like
all this
it's really complicated. Yeah, and that we're not in the context of a good, happy, holy scenario, and so that's really complicated. And then next on the timeline, they have to go to they bring their egg and sperm to the lab, and then the fertility specialists will fertilize the egg and the sperm in petri dishes. And so then hopefully what they're aiming for is like a dozen brand new little tiny human beings. Yeah.
Why do they have to create so many?
To get the best odds of survival, because not all of them are going to make it, and then some of them also are going to have a genetic anomaly, and so they grade them. They do DNA testing on these embryos, and they grade them A, B, C, D, and the A ones are the ones that are going to get implanted, and then the B's and the C's are frozen and left over. The D's are discarded, and so automatically off the bat you have a caste system in a lab.
You have a certain percentage of discarded children.
Yeah, I mean, and we're already assigning a value to a human being that has no say in the matter.
So they're making genetic gradings.
Yes, they are.
Can't imagine a group of people that have done that before.
Well, right. I mean, people accuse us of being like crazy conspiracy theorists sometimes when we talk about this. And it's like, no, actually, history has a track record of grading human beings on a value system and discarding ones with characteristics that they didn't like. And people also, remember the movie Gattaca? I love that movie. Where you get to like choose your designer baby. And
yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched it.
I love that movie, but it's actually really, really good at prophesying the things that are actually happening today. Like you can literally pick gender for your child now with the IVF process. Like that used to be a pipe dream a few years ago. Right. It's successful now. You can choose like, well, I want a boy and next I'm going to have a girl. And you try to choose other biological characteristics now like that. You can pay extra to have that done. It's real. It's extremely common. It first started kicking off in Australia a few years ago. Now it's kind of happening everywhere, and no one's really talking about it. Yeah.
So now we're paying bonus for the upgrades.
Yes.
We're
oh my God, when you say it that way, Brian.
It's really it's like, oh, I want dual air conditioning and power windows and stuff. Like, so let's just throw down a little more money.
Yeah, and I'm sure parents who are just longing for a child, they're probably not aware of all of this going on in the background. So we can't condemn them. And often they're just completely being lied to, or just simply people are omitting to tell them what's going on.
Probably that.
Yeah.
It's probably
this is a several billion-dollar industry here. Right. And like the people who are involved in making this industry happen have no problem with all of the ethical dilemmas that you have, where it's like we have millions and millions of frozen children that are just waiting or discarded or like burned for electricity. Like we're going to talk about a case from Washington, D.C. like that.
Discarded children, yes.
And we'll talk about that case, which is insane, in a few minutes. But you have this billion-dollar industry that is made on the destruction of life. Now, like we said earlier with IVF, it's not inherent that every single embryo is going to be discarded, but it's so common.
Yeah.
And then you have this ethical dilemma of like, okay, well, what do we do with the children who are frozen now?
Well, if we're going to stick to the timeline, there's more.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what happens after you grade ABCD? In Plant A, sometimes, depending on the doctor, depending on the couple, they might want to implant more than one to increase odds of survival, because sometimes it doesn't take. Sometimes the baby does not successfully implant.
Especially if the woman is having fertility problems, that her womb might be kind of a hostile environment like already.
There may be some hormonal complications that are going on anyway. They're causing problems.
Yeah, and also just the unnatural aspect of creating life in a lab and then transferring it and trying to survive all of those changes. I mean, that's going to be very difficult.
Right.
And so there's actually about a 30% success rate, which is
30.
Yeah. And I remember actually when I was a kid.
Let's back up to the beginning here. Option A.
Oh dear.
Has all of these ethical problems. We haven't asked what the root of the issue is. We just jumped to this, and the success rate is 30%. Yeah. Somebody's going home with a big stack of cash.
It's to like $10,000 to $30,000 a pop. It's a lot.
So now you know why it's option A.
Yeah, it's a lot, and there's fertility clinics everywhere. Here. So they now some parents and some doctors will want to implant more than one, and then what happens if they all take? That's what happened with Octomom.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody remembers that case, and they were like, a lot of people urged her to have what they call selective reduction, which is just code for abortion. They were like, you need to selectively reduce some of these embryos because it will be dangerous for them all to be growing in one womb. And I mean, they're right. It is dangerous.
A bunch of them,
Yeah, it is dangerous to have that many children in one pregnancy. It's dangerous for the mom, dangerous for the baby. It was miraculous that all 8 of her children survived. Mm-hmm. And I mean, she was very brave to reject selective reduction, but at the same time, she chose to have 8 implanted, and that I always wonder why she did that. Like, that was a dangerous move, you know?
Yeah.
I wish she had been more careful, and I'm just so glad those babies are okay, you know? But most time people are not going to implant that many, like maybe 1 to 3 at a time. But then, what if they're like, I really only want to be pregnant with 1. I didn't expect all 3 to implant successfully. So they're offered selective reduction. A lot of people are also simply lied to about what that is. They don't use the word abortion.
Of course not.
And they're not thinking of, the parents are not thinking, I'm being offered a chance to kill a couple of my children so that I can have another one.
After
they're
all
not thinking
this
about
pain
that.
and agony.
Yeah.
And hardship and frustration and trying to get a child, and now you've got more than you wanted.
Yeah.
I guess so.
And the doctors use this is big fertility money. Like, these physicians are using, or there are a lot of them are just lab techs too. They're using very strategic language to say, like, you've had really successful procedures. It turns out there's more than we need. I would like, if you're comfortable, to go in and make this a more friendly, less hostile environment for your baby so it can survive more. How about we do selective reduction next Tuesday? And so there's like, this sounds great, right? I have no idea what
this is going to help my pregnancy no matter.
Cool. Okay, you know, most people, unless they go Google selective reduction and really start reading more about it, they're like, I'm following my doctor's advice.
And then the grief to find that out later of like what you've actually done, you can't undo that.
Right.
No.
Yeah, it's really tragic. I have a few people in my circles who were born out of IVF, and I mean, they're just amazing people. And so I always just want to be really, really careful that we're not making them feel ashamed for being here. It's just like, these doctors need to stop lying to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's more.
There is a lot more, but I think we're running tight
Okay.
on time for this topic.
If
I
you
feel
want
like
more, book us to come speak. We can
Yes.
come speak at your church or your school or you name it. There's a lot of people on Texas Right to Life staff who come and speak about the ethics of this. And yeah, it's awesome.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We have some important information, upcoming events, and things to do. So, Nathan, drop that information. Texas Right to Life is facing 14 lawsuits from Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. They're suing us because we helped pass the Texas Heartbeat Act, and they're trying to scare us pro-lifers into backing down. Please join us in the fight against Planned Parenthood and donate to protect the Texas Heartbeat Act. You can fight for the unborn and build a pro-life Texas that values every human life. Go to texasrighttolife.com/lawsuit to make your contribution. Every cent will help, and it's greatly appreciated.
Texas led the charge for a historic year in the pro-life movement. Now is the time to celebrate. Join us April 23rd for the annual San Antonio Celebration of Life. You'll have a blast meeting other pro-life advocates, hearing success stories from college students on the front lines, and getting an exclusive inside look at the next steps of the pro-life movement. Go to texasrighttolife.com/events to get your tickets. We can't wait to see you April 23rd in San Antonio.
Welcome back, Nathan. Thank you. Nathan's our editor, so I will pick on Nathan a little bit. He does our production. He's sitting over there, running some things in the background. So, okay, this one's heavy. We're gonna link in the description. We're not gonna put any pictures in here. Warning: graphic content. So the bodies of brutally aborted, well, not that any abortion is not brutal, but the pictures are graphic.
Yeah, full-term
So
children. So if you have
babies
young listeners,
discovered in DC. So
be careful.
yeah, young listeners, check the timestamp in the description. You can jump ahead, or don't click the link. Okay, it's disturbing.
Absolutely.
Disturbing.
The pro-life group, the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, was, doing their ministry out in Washington, D.C. They encounter the medical waste, quote unquote, truck drivers coming to the clinic to pick up the so-called medical waste. In this process, they discovered in talking to the vehicle driver that these children, the aborted children from this clinic, were going to be burned and used for electricity in Baltimore, which is
Shocking.
absolutely...
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's really, not much shocks me anymore because
I
I've
don't
been
want to charge
working.
my phone anymore.
Yeah,
I just
I've
don't
been
care.
working in the pro-life movement for 10 years professionally now and 3 years as a student before that. And this shocked me. I was like, what? That is so dystopian.
Mm-hmm. It's just, how can we use the human person as much as we possibly can?
This is straight up from the Matrix.
Yes.
Soylent Green is people, okay? Come on, what the heck?
Right.
So, for power.
Yes, but the media does not see anything wrong with that. That's not the story. The story is how the activists got the
Right.
fetal bodies. So they're jumping all over these activists saying oh my gosh, you people are crazy. I mean, that aside, they're completely letting the abortionists have a free pass. These corpses, if you look at the bodies of these aborted children.
And careful if you do.
full-term.
Careful if you do. It's nightmare fuel.
Yeah,
But
I would
these
honestly, I would not recommend that anyone open the article, which is weird because
It's
I
on our
want you to be
website.
informed, but
Now everybody's going to be super curious and they're going to go click it. But
no, I mean it's
Just
those
be
images
ready.
that stay burned in your head forever. I mean these are literally for full-term children.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of
Yeah.
the pediatricians that examined the remains held the body of this baby and said, this one belongs in a nursery. This child is so developed. You can see his little eyes, his fingers and everything. He should have been born and
yeah.
loved by his family, and instead, his body is sitting in a
I mean,
box.
these children were bigger. I've had 2 preemie babies, and one was 5 and one was 6 pounds, and then I had one full-term baby who was 8. And these babies were bigger than all of mine.
Oh my gosh.
Like one of those babies looked like it could have been 9 pounds.
Yeah,
And-
my girls were a couple weeks early, and they were on the smaller side. They were in the 6, low 7 range, and these kids are as big as
Yeah, one of them was definitely bigger
mine.
than
One of
mine.
them for sure. Yeah, it's
It's so sad. Just pray for these little souls. And the people who did this to them.
You have to wonder and consider, like, how are these late-term abortions being performed? There's the partial birth abortion, which is illegal, but one of the baby's bodies looks like that they could have been a victim of a partial birth abortion, where the abortionist will take a sharp object like scissors and deliver everything of the baby except for her head, and then stab the back of her head and
Yeah.
You know-
Sever the spinal cord.
Yes.
So that they can say the baby was not born alive.
Right.
Which is just disgusting.
Right. So the people who are actually investigating this, not the media, of course, and not even the DC authorities, are saying they don't really want to investigate this. They think, no worries, like, these children were legally aborted, so it's perfectly fine. But you look at these photos and you see just how barbaric the abortion is. Like, it's not okay. And there's possibility that they violated the partial birth abortion ban, which is a national law. It doesn't matter what Washington, D.C.'s policies are there. Like, this is a national law. And also, like, that some of these children could have been born alive and then later killed. So there are calls to Congress right now to investigate this tragedy, that this could have been an actual, like, case of murder of actually born children being murdered. So keep your eye on how this story develops. We're hoping that there will be some action in Congress to actually make sure that this is getting investigated and that these children get justice. So that's where the story is going, but it's just so convoluted that the media is trying to cover it up. They're trying to point the finger at the people who exposed this crime instead of the people who committed the crime. And then the DC authorities trying to brush it under the rug too, that this is this huge just cover-up scheme, so that way they can protect abortion, at any cost, including the lives of these 5 children and millions others every single year.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of that case out of Pennsylvania just a few years ago. What was that abortionist's name?
Kermit Gosnell.
Kermit Gosnell. There's a really great documentary about him, and a movie, actually, a documentary that is separate from the drama movie, and they're both really, really good. And I'm guessing the media just, like, doesn't want another Kermit Gosnell, because do you remember that?
Yeah.
When the media refused to cover, they just, like, played dumb, la la la, we don't want to talk about this.
Right.
But then pro-lifers kept pushing and pushing. We actually got a trending hashtag going, calling them out, until finally some reporters were, like, intellectually honest enough to say, well, maybe we should at least just go to the trial and listen in, and then it became a national sensation, and then everybody was split over, okay, well, if that guy's just a creepy extremist, yeah, he keeps baby parts in jars in his office, but that's not what abortion really looks like. And then pro-lifers were saying, it's all bad, it's all murder, it's all murder. And here we have another case. It's coming out again, and media's probably like, la, I don't want to talk about this right now. And on the heels of Roe v. Wade about to be overturned,
Hopefully.
maybe this will be a good wake-up call for the nation, and maybe they'll be more culturally ready to accept the overturn of Roe v. Wade too, to be reminded, this is murder.
Yeah.
We gotta pray.
Picture too, if it wasn't turning blue-gray, that kid, I mean, it's a freshly born child. Like,
Yep.
I know some of my pro-choice people in my life would rightly say, well, this is wrong. I'm not saying anyone should be doing this, but I'm still pro-choice. So I don't know.
Right.
What would you say to that? I have my own answer as well. How would you respond to that, Kim?
I think that's how you see the effectiveness of the pro-life legislation that we've passed up until right now, that you have things like the partial birth abortion ban, the dismemberment abortion ban. Why do those names sound as graphic as they are? It's because they reflect how graphic abortion is. And we've found that if you show people these very horrendous abortions, and every abortion is horrendous, but if you see like people who do not think that they're pro-life, they'll see how a child in the second trimester is dismembered while being alive and sometimes can feel pain. They'll see these gruesome partial birth abortions where, like I said earlier, the baby is completely delivered except for the head and then killed. That once they see how barbaric and inhumane that is, they not only oppose those abortions, but hopefully all abortions, because there is no difference biologically, morally, in the DNA, the human person
The only
that is
difference is
created.
size of the baby.
Yes.
Yeah. One is just a little smaller than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And there shouldn't be a moral difference at all, but for some reason people still justify it.
Right. So you see like, okay, well, this baby was born at, let's say, 40 weeks. Okay, what about the day before that? Is that abortion okay? No, probably not. Okay, well, I think that abortion is okay at 20 weeks. Okay, well, what about the day before that? And so you can keep going until you find like there is no moral difference anymore between the child who is full term and the child who has just been conceived.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amen.
We got to pray. Holy Week is this week. We've got Easter coming on Sunday and Good Friday, of course, coming up on Friday. So it's an important time to pray and to reflect on Christ's sacrifice for us, how, nobody's too late for conversion, something that is really prominent in the Passion of Christ, I think, is what's the difference, like thinking about what is the difference between Judas and Peter. Both of them betrayed Christ.
Yeah.
And all of us betray Christ. But the difference between Judas's outcome and Peter's outcome is that Peter repented. Peter sought the Lord and trusted in his mercy and was forgiven and ended up becoming a martyr for Christianity. And Judas did not. So any of these just tragic stories that we've talked about today, none of them are beyond Christ's mercy.
Yep.
And so it's not too late for anybody. As I always say, God has done a lot more with a lot less.
Yeah, I've said to friends who are like, oh, my story, it's too messy or whatever. I'm like, if God can knock a terrorist bounty hunter off his horse and have him write 2/3 of the New Testament,
Paul.
Paul.
Just in case.
In case
If
you
you're
didn't
new to
follow,
this.
you'll be okay.
Yeah.
We can work this out. God's big enough to work this out.
That's amazing. So true.
Yeah. So
Paul was a murderer, and then he became one of the most vocal evangelists out there.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
It's never too late.
So Easter plans, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to pray.
Yeah.
We're going to pray.
Church.
If you want to know Jesus, call 1-800-TEXAS RIDE to Life. No, just kidding.
That's not a real
but
phone
no,
number.
really.
It's not a real
I know I'm
number.
just being ridiculous. But it's so important. We can't separate the pro-life mission from the mission of Christ. Like, they're one and the same. And we pray every day in our office for all of our supporters, and we have a pregnant moms list, and people always call in and tell us their stories. There's so many times people say, I've literally never told anyone before, but I want to tell you guys. It's like, that's quite a burden, but it's a beautiful burden. So if you want to call and tell us a
Adrian would
story.
love to talk to you.
Adrian,
She would.
she's so
actually-
good at
She loves
answering the
it.
phone.
She's at the desk next to my office and answers the phone right now, and so I can sometimes hear some of these stories, and I'll peek around the corner like, what?
She's
is
just sitting
going
there
on?
counseling away. I'm like,
She
you go,
is.
girl.
She is one of the coolest people. Maybe we'll get her in here sometime to talk.
I would love her to
She
come
has
tell
great
her
stories.
stories.
Yeah, she
So
does.
if you've got a prayer request, we will lift you up in prayer every single day in our office. Call us, leave a comment, send us an email, whatever it is, beeper, I don't know, whatever you do.
Beaver. Like, that was my people a long time. Like,
I don't know.
Beaver? You're
I'm
not
just
old
kidding.
enough to even have had
Send us
one
a
of those.
tweet.
Okay, send us a
Send
tweet.
us a tweet.
That's
There you
better.
go.
That's the modern day beeper. So if you have a prayer request, let us know. We'll lift you up in prayer. Other than that, have a great Holy Week, and I guess we will catch you next Tuesday.
Awesome.